Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Weekly Word Pod Blast. And I'm Chris Hauth, and you are listening to a weekly update here on this podcast about coaching inputs, questions I've received, observations I've made from reading Training Peaks logs, from reading your updates from training, as well as just general email questions I get on a weekly basis from many athletes, as well as athletes that could be potential athletes down the road or are just checking in and wondering if I'm able to give them some solid advice and help and input regarding their training, regarding how they're approaching their training, regarding their mindset, regarding nutrition, regarding race strategy, and so on. Like I've said in most podcasts, I do this primarily for my athletes because it's a good forum, a good way to talk things through and explain what I mean and my positions on certain training approaches or why I do certain things. It's also a good forum to discuss how I go about my training, the reasons I put together training plans that I do, many different inputs and ways to let you, the listener, know why I do what I do, for you, for myself, or why I say what I say in the training plans, blogs, and so on. So that being said, I wanted to go over a few topics today that just sort of fit into that space and into that opening description. One of the things I just read in the New York Times a couple days ago, and it sort of reminded me of what we often go through in our training and racing, but mainly in our training, is when we compare ourselves to others and how we go about sabotaging ourselves when we do that. So this article was talking more about spending. It was called "Stop Spending Based on Other People's Wealth," and it was it's a regular column in the New York Times by Carl Richards. He's always in the business section, and he always does he's known as the sketch guy, I guess. And he always, on these little paper napkins, has these like illustrations showing what he means by the economic principles as well as financial approaches that he's talking about. He sketches them out on a napkin and makes them quite easy to understand. Anyway, he was talking about how a lot of us spend our money or use our money based off of how we perceive other people and what they have and how they live their lives. And I'm not going to go into the details of that article, but it did bring about an interesting thought process for me, for many of you, of a lot of us train and race based off of the perception of who we want to be in other people's eyes. And of course, that's a validation. It's a confidence question on how we're going about in this sport. But it's also an added burden that we really don't need as we go forward in this lifestyle, this hobby, this endeavor we call ultra endurance sports. And that being whether it's triathlon, ultra running, marathons, ultra swims, whatever you're taking on, to add the pressure of living up to what other people think you should be doing or how you want to be perceived in other people's eyes, basically takes all the energy you need in order to just have your personal best day. This training and this racing is hard enough without comparing yourself too much to others. And we have for example, in triathlon, we have a wonderful mechanism for that. That's called your time. And just improving your own time, race after race, year after year, distance after distance, is plenty good to continue moving down that progression line that I keep talking about. The part that I can't reiterate enough to everybody, and this is repetitive in all my podcasts, is if you continue to take care of your own individual daily goal, monthly goal, yearly goal of being a little bit better today than yesterday, being a little bit better in this race than the last race, being a little bit better in training today than yesterday, all the results will automatically happen. It's impossible mathematically to not be constantly improving and then constantly not to achieving or getting closer to achieving your goals. It's like, that piece of paper, what do they say? My kids were telling me this a couple of weeks ago, and I've heard it before, but that is you can't fold a piece of paper more than 8 times or something like that. It's a similar concept here. I mean, if you continue to improve, you will get to that point of being not invincible, but that you can't fold that paper anymore. And that's a pretty good place to be, because then you are either the best that you can possibly be. You've achieved your goals. You've achieved the results, the podiums, the times, anything that you're looking for. You've achieved that. And you can even blow through that because you continue to improve a little bit each day. And I speak of this as an athlete myself, of shifting that mindset a few years ago, where I stopped thinking how much better can I get to more how do I stop myself from slowing down. And not in a negative way, but saying, well, as I get older, as I get closer to 50, I can't expect myself to have the results that I had when I was 30, 35, even 40. But I can continue to work hard and stay focused on not declining, on not slowing down. And just by continuing to do the times and holding on to the paces and the skills that I had in my 30s, as I approach 50, that means the results take care of themselves. If I'm doing my Ironman time that I was doing in my late 30s, in my late 40s, I know that'll be plenty to win a world championships in my age group. If I continue to run my marathon or my ultra marathon times or paces, or continue to hold pace long enough for 50 or 100 miles like I did in my late 30s, I will do plenty good in trail running. So there's different ways to quantify it. But anyway, the point here with this New York Times article is do the training for yourself. Do the racing for yourself and your own personal improvement. If you are trying to keep up with the Joneses and see the results that others have, or the results that others are trying to get, and why aren't you getting those or trying to get, you don't know their situation. You don't know how they train. You don't know how much time they have available. You don't know how many babysitters they have, or if they have kids at all, or if they don't have a lifestyle that requires any type of other commitments. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just that you can't judge them or can't compare yourself to them, because your life, your work, your family, your personal situation is guaranteed different than the person you're comparing yourself to. It's already impossible to compare two athletes when I coach them with regards to how they're progressing and how the training load they're able to handle. And I'm looking at it from a third-party perspective. I'm looking at it from the outside looking in and trying to compare two people. What you are doing by comparing yourself to another person, there's no way you know that, and therefore should be comparing yourself. Do your best, focus on your training, focus on your progression, and the results will come. And if you are not progressing, you see that in your training, and therefore you know what will happen in the next race. You won't progress as much, or maybe not at all, but you have your own indicators for your own performance, and also throwing in what others think you should do, or how you want to keep up with others, or how you think you should beat others because of your training, or you see what they do. It's wasted energy and will never, ever work out in your favor. So that was a little bit of my opening topic that I wanted to discuss, just because I saw that article and I thought it would be a good tie-in to bringing up that subject of progression and focusing on ourselves and not comparing ourselves to others, and just staying focused on our own improvement will do plenty to be very successful, very happy, to feel very complete, to feel the joy in this sport. I can't reiterate enough for how many of us we need to remember this is fun, this is a lifestyle choice, this is a hobby, this is something we are doing in our free time. And for us not to enjoy it, for us not to really love it, for us not to really be connected to it, for it to be a chore or something that brings about negative energy because you're trying to keep up with somebody or prove yourself to someone, it's a very difficult motivational tool, and it just eventually wears out. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of successful athletes, and actually successful results, I should say, of athletes who had a fire in their belly and had something to prove. Absolutely. That is definitely part of this sport and part of athletics and sport in general. I've used that fire in my belly to achieve certain results or push myself a little bit further, whether in training or in long, hard races, and keeping that drive and that fire in your belly going in order to get you to the finish line with sort of a more focused, not angry, but definitely tunnel vision and a motivation to help you get through those hard miles. But I've been able to say on each one of those times when I had that fire in my belly of, I want to prove it to myself. I don't want to prove others wrong. I want to prove it to myself. They will see, feel, look at the results either way. Feel being, I said that because if it's competitors on the course with me, they will feel that not only I passed them, but I beat them. But the fire in my belly was more about, I want to do this. I want to validate myself. I want to prove to myself that I'm not worthy or not good enough, or that I do have the ability, the capabilities, the talent to achieve this result. So again, that's what that article was about, and I hope it helps you a little bit to just train through the noise that's out there and when it comes time for racing, but it's sort of the main training point here, is that train through the noise of what other people are saying, what they're observing about your training, what they do, how their race, not race results, what their training results are currently showing. It's all noise. It means nothing. It only means something if you were exactly in their shoes and had their same physiology and had their same background and had their same family status and had their same work status and had the same hours to train. You can never compare like that. Compare to yourself week over week, day after day, month after month, and things will take care of themselves. I received an email a few weeks ago asking about a topic on the Pod Blast, and I feel like it's a good time of year to discuss this, and that's about testing. Why I think it's so important, how frequently, what the outcome is, what our desired goal with testing is for me as the coach, you as the athlete. So I wanted to go a little bit into that. Testing is a great motivator and tool in our training. And what it does, in my opinion, is it validates our training. So as you start a season, whether with a coach or without a coach, I mean, you can do the testing without a coach to just validate the training that you're on yourself. But the beautiful thing about a good lactate threshold test is it's in a closed set environment. It's on a CompuTrainer or any type of trainer. It could be a Wahoo trainer, whatever. And the parameters and the data are consistent when you come back to test again. So let's say you test now, today, December 1. You get your lactate threshold test. You get your zones. You get your thresholds. It's in a certain environment, at a certain temperature, on a certain calibrated machine, Everything besides you, the body, is the same. And then you go back in 3 months or 4 months and you test again. And the beauty there is either you've improved, you've declined, or you've stayed the same. And so you can validate if the training you've been doing, if you're confident the training has been going well, you validate it. Not only do you see it out on the road, you see it out in your performance in runs and bikes and swims, but here you can actually test it and put forth the same environment, the same trainer, and put your body through the same protocol and then match apples to apples. And it holds me as a coach accountable, which I like, because you, the athlete, see the improvement, see what we've been doing, see why we've been doing it, and hopefully you have the aha moment where you're like, now I get it. Now I know why we did all that low heart rate stuff. Now I know why we did intervals there, because look, it improved there. Now I know why we did this high intensity stuff. This is why I was at this heart rate. This is why he had me walk up hills not to get my heart rate over a certain threshold because of this. So it pulls you, the athlete, into the coaching better. It pulls you, the athlete, into the training better. The better you understand the training, the better you can have the results and the outcomes and the specific outcomes of the training sessions and the training plan, so that you will then be successful racing in order to then become a better athlete. Now, you becoming a better athlete always helps me, of course, as a coach, because it validates what I'm doing with you. But it also makes you enjoy the sport and makes you enjoy the training and the hard work and the sacrifices you're making. It allows you to enjoy that more because you're seeing proof in the pudding. You're seeing black and white on paper. I did this test on December 1. I did the same exact test on February 1. This is my improvement. This is why I didn't improve. This is where I've been training. Look, because there's what the heart rate line shows, where I did the majority of my training. This is where I, as a coach, can see if you've been cheating on the training program. So it gives us a ton of data. It allows us to take our perceptions, our sensations from the road that we're seeing, and allows us to validate them. Now, throw in a race into that. Now we have race results, race data. We have test results, test data. And we have training results and training data. You throw all those in, we know what we're doing. We know what we need to do. We know what's been working. We know how your body is responding. So testing allows for all that. It takes just a little bit more guesswork out of it. It quantifies the data and your improvement and how your body's reacting to the training. And again, it engages you more into the training. To go back to the previous point, it makes it more fun. It makes it more understandable. It makes you better as an athlete because you can train smarter and more engaged. So how often should we test? I personally like it every 12 to 16 weeks. If the training's been done right, the adaptations should have happened in 12 to 16 weeks. That's plenty of time, 3 to 4 months, to apply the Zone 2 training, the aerobic training, to apply the race-specific work if we need to apply the high-intensity work to bring your thresholds up. All kinds of different mixes should be validated by 12 to 16 weeks from your previous test. What do I like about the test? The test gives me a prescription of what you need. I can look at the test results, I can look at the curve, I can look at the data, I can look at it and say, the prescription that this athlete needs is X. And I can write on my prescription pad, for lack of a better term, exactly what I want you to do. And I write out the training plan based off of that for the next 4 to 6 weeks. And then sort of halfway through, I'm looking for a validation other than a test, but just to see where we are. And then write the training plan, big picture, for another 4 to 6 weeks. And then it's time to test again. It allows me to get an accurate snapshot of who you are as an athlete right now. And by getting that accurate snapshot, we can quickly have immediate impacts on your training. I don't have to wait 4 to 6 to 12 weeks to see how you're doing and what kind of training we should do and what you respond to. No, I get it exactly right there. This is who you are currently as an athlete. It has nothing to do with your past or your future or whatever. This is who you are today at this moment. And I can work with that body of work with a prescription to get desired outcome X. So another great aspect of why I love testing. Another side effect of testing is we can also see if you're overtrained, if you're a bit too tired, if you're getting sick, things like that, because we have a variety of past tests where your heart rate should usually be, how you usually respond to the increases in wattages and difficulties of the test or speed on the treadmill, and suddenly you're not. We can tell from that if you're overtrained, how you've been training, if you are getting sick, if you're stressed, if you're fatigued from travel. All those things, all those markers come into play with frequent testing. Frequent testing allows us to sort of build a mini biological passport of who you are. 6 or 8 tests in a row laid over show us some incredible data over who you are, how you respond, what you need. When you change distances, if you're going to a half Ironman, now, we see from the past test, this is how that person responds to this type of training, through the intensity. It gives us a clear insight of how we want to write the prescription for the event, for the goal, for the outcome we're looking for. And it gives you, the athlete, the validation or not. That's an important factor. It might show you that it's not working. And wouldn't you rather know in a test, on a simple 45-minute lactate threshold test after 12 weeks of working with a coach, if your training has been working, versus putting all your chips in a basket and going to a race and then seeing the results aren't there? Like I've said in many podcasts, and even on podcasts with other shows, there should be no guesswork in this. A lot of people go into races wondering, how will I do? Results-wise, you should be able to narrow down your Ironman time, your 100-mile time, your 50-mile time, your marathon time, to within a pretty small parameter. I say Ironman within 20-30 minutes. I say an ultramarathon, 100-mile run, 60-mile run, 100K or something like that. You should be able to narrow that down to about an hour. And a half Ironman to 10-15 minutes, and a marathon to 10-15 minutes. From your training, the data's there. It shouldn't just all of a sudden be this wonderful improvement that you didn't see in training, and all of a sudden you drop 30 minutes from what you were holding in training. There is no guesswork in this. It's a pretty straightforward, results-based training method and training plan and coaching plan. And that's not me, that's any coach. So going back to the testing, it helps us validate exactly the training we're doing. And that way, going into the race, you can focus on executing your day. And there's plenty of difficult things on race day. So just because we know what our body is capable of on race day doesn't mean it'll happen like that. That brings us back to the mindset and the mental sabotage that I believe often happens. And, arousal control, pacing, being patient during the day, that's already difficult enough. But that's only to achieve the best possible day based off of your training results and what you know you should be able to do. And then the other difficulty on race day is nutrition and hydration and so on. And while you can practice that all you want, there's always some, external factors that start messing with that. And you have to stay focused on that well enough versus wondering, can I hold 200 watts on a bike for 5 hours? Of course you can. Why? Because you've done it in training. So this shouldn't be the question of the day. Can I hold 200 watts on a bike for 5 hours or whatever your number is? Or can I run 8-minute miles off the bike after biking 100 miles or more? Of course you can. You've done it in training. Maybe not for 26.2 miles, but we're going to get far enough into your day and into your race where this is not guesswork. It's, okay, how close am I coming to the perfect day, to an average day, to a not so average day? An average, that's your time difference. Like, let's use 10:30 as an Ironman gold time. Well, going into the Ironman race, if 10:30 is your goal time and you've been training around that, been smart in your approach, are injury-free and had a good training build up to it, guess what? A solid day should be 10:30. A perfect day should be 10:15. A not so great day should be 10:45. There's that 30-minute window that we're talking about. And so environment, course, temperatures, a variety of other factors will mess with that 30-minute window. But, or, certain nutrition problems or certain things that come up that are out of our control. But overall, the day should be in that 30 minutes. So the testing helps us, again, getting closer to taking the guesswork out of training, taking the guesswork going into a race. The frequency we talked about, why we want to test, we talked about. So also timing into races. Ideally, you have your last test about 6 to 8 weeks before the race. Now, if you have access to cheaper testing, of course, 2-3 weeks prior is great because it gives you that last snapshot of who you are right before the race and the most accurate, pacing and wattage data. But I like it about 6 to 8 weeks before that A race or before a key race, because that way you can take your latest snapshot of who you are and your training data and apply it to the last few rounds, few weeks of training for that race simulation, to have the best data available and then therefore be able to put that forth in your training on the big days and race simulation days to automatically apply your best race wattages, your best race paces, your best race heart rates, so that then you can focus on those other things that we've talked about, from race nutrition to gear to hydration to pacing to mindset and so on. And I meant pacing more late in your day, or starting off stronger and hanging on and so on. So all that comes out of that pre-race test, so we can start messing with trying different race simulations and different approaches, because we have accurate data of who you are right now from a fitness perspective. I'm not going to go into all the details of what the curve and what the data means. And for most of you, when you test and you don't test around me, which is the majority of you, I either send you the protocol that I'd like to have for testing, or you're already familiar with it, or where you're getting tested does a plenty good protocol that I can work with. Why do I have a certain protocol? Well, I like to have the standard, basic, boring, simple, first-year med student can do it lactate threshold test, because it's easy, replicable anywhere. I can do it at training camps with you. We just set up a trainer, and we have some basic test strips, and we can do it. We can do it leaning out of a car, riding up a mountain. We can test you at the end of a long ride to see how you responded to the training and what your lactate accumulation is in your blood after a 4-hour ride at a training camp, so that we can get some good data before you start the run. By keeping it super simple, and by keeping it replicable, it allows us to do it anywhere, repeat it anywhere. It keeps it pretty cheap, keeps it pretty straightforward, so that you can understand it as the athlete, that other coaches can understand it. It just works out well that way. While the VO2 max tests and all the resting metabolic information and so on, there's definitely good information in there, but it's not as applicable, it's not as specific, and it's not as easily understood and therefore used while you're training and you're thinking about how you're going out and doing these intervals, or why I'm keeping this heart rate, or what am I trying to stimulate in today's workout, what is the desired outcome, what is the purpose, what is the deliberate training I'm doing today. Well, you seem to understand that better when you understand the testing and how you're trying to move the curve and what outcome we're looking for in the next test. In a VO2 max test with your oxygen uptake and your lung volume and so on, it really doesn't tell you, or you don't really see how the curve works as you're doing that test. It's hard to imagine that while you're training on how you're changing the way you exhale carbon, CO2, while you're intaking O2 and how that's all working in your body. So might have talked a little bit in circles there, but anyway, the reason is that we're trying to keep it simple, keep it replicable, and keep it that you can really understand it. So that's testing, and ideally you find a local university, you find a local location, you find somewhere where you travel to for work where you can quickly get tested. Ideally, we get that lab lactate threshold test. Of course, there's field tests we can do, and those are effective, not nearly as effective as what we're looking for, but they're effective enough. And again, if we get them enough and we can replicate them enough and we create the environment that's consistent enough that we have enough data to overlay, those can be quite effective as well. It's hard to find that environment in order to do that perfectly flat road, that perfectly steady incline, let's say, that track to do the run test on. While that all sounds easily attainable, because we all have access to that, but then it's a question of temperature and headwinds and gear and traffic lights and so on. So it's quite a skill to be able to mimic the exact same test and the exact same environment over and over again. Most easily, in my opinion, done running on a track, where we want to find the proper weather, where you don't have a headwind on one side of the track and a tailwind on the other, and that's different than the last test, or that the temperature swings are too big. But overall, a track is usually a pretty steady place to do a good run test. And I personally enjoy those field tests myself because, again, it validates your training. And so you can do it every 6 weeks on your own. You just go to the track and repeat the same test and see, you know what, at the same heart rate, look, my pace has gone down another 20 seconds per mile. Or you're doing something different with regards to a higher intensity or a different type of track test. But testing is pure validation of your training, of what your coach's training is giving for you. It takes the guesswork out of what we're doing and keeps us moving forward. And that's the goal. Man, here we are already at 30 minutes into this podcast. As you can hear, there's some background noise. I'm driving back from Bend, Oregon, back to the Bay Area of San Francisco. I was up there for a little bit over a day and a half, not only to see some friends, but planning a pretty high-end, not high-end with regards to fanciness or expense, but pretty focused training camp up there later this summer. And so I wanted to meet with a couple of the local guys, friends, as well as coaches, to make sure I have everything lined up to put together a good camp that is different than the past camps I've done. And there's more coming with regards to camps in the next few weeks. For all of you, whether my athletes or the friends of yours or those of you listening that are beyond my athletes, that you can, that I think you'll really like. We're going to change our approach to camps. We being another two coaches and I that are sort of putting together a new package, a new approach, a new way to do camps. And hopefully you guys will all enjoy it and be able to take advantage of it. Because I think there's a lot of value to camps if done right. But I think the model in the United States, there's a little bit of a giveaway of how we're going to do it. I think the model in the United States is a little bit off compared to how they do it in Europe, and work it there. So that was just a little side note. One last topic I probably want to go into today is your desire, your passion, your mindset of training. And again, I was listening to a radio show or something the other day, and they were talking about athletes, in this case, pro athletes, on how they're criticized by others or receive feedback by others, whether it's in the industry, in the sport, or amongst their peers, and how they take that feedback. And it sort of brought me back to, in our sports, in this ultra endurance world, and my coaching, And let me dive into that, what I mean by that. So in this example on the radio show, they were talking more about the X's and O's and how you can critique somebody, provide feedback for somebody, provide insight for somebody, help them with the X's and O's of, let's say, the game itself, whether it's football, basketball, baseball. But you cannot criticize, question, provide feedback, insinuate, or even guess what their desire is in the sport, how they approach the sport from a passion standpoint, from a mindset standpoint, from a how much it means to them standpoint. And that's where athletes get defensive. Don't you dare question how important this is to me, with how much passion I train or how much passion I play. You can criticize me for how I'm executing the plan. You can criticize me for how I'm doing on game day with regards to the playbook or the plays that I'm executing, but you can't question my desire, my passion. And so when you pull that back into the ultra endurance world, it's again an interesting topic that I wanted to bring up here, and that is you should have the passion part, the desire part, the focus part, the love part, the fun part, the mindset part, and not from a mindset of executing, but the mindset that you want to do this. You should have that part dialed. No coaching should be helping you with your desire to do well, your desire to achieve your goals, your passion for doing this ultra endurance sport. That should not come up. And no coach, whether me or any coach you might work with in the future or in the past or you're thinking about working with, should question that. The only thing that coaching is truly about is helping you with the X's and O's of the sport. And so in this case, for triathlon, for ultra running, for ultra swimming, for ultra man, for any event, endeavor, adventure that you're taking on, coaching is about preparing you to be able to achieve your goals physically and mentally. Not that you want to achieve those goals, not that it's important for you to achieve those goals or why you have those goals, but how to work in tandem as a team, as a brother, as a family member almost, standing beside you and helping you achieve your goal. With a good training plan, with good support, with good insight, with good education, with a good race day plan in order for you to achieve your goal. And that goal, again, like we've talked in other podcasts, can be anything. It could be running once around Kilimanjaro. It could be swimming the length of the Sacramento River of 135 miles, which I did coach somebody for. It could be your first Ironman. It could be winning Ironman Kona. It's all irrelevant when it comes to coaching. Is about the X's and O's, and me, in this case, since I'm talking primarily to you, my athletes, me helping you achieve your goals. And there's so much that comes to play into that with regards to, if we're doing everything in the training plan to achieve your goals, if your goals are realistic in the short term, or if we have to push them more into long term, if you're doing the training plan, how you're absorbing the training plan. So there's a give and take. There's definitely a back and forth there on how it works with what I need to be doing, what you need to be doing. But overall, the point of coaching is for me to stand beside you and to help you with the X's and O's of the game. And if you do those X's and O's, if you complete the training plan as written, if you execute the race plan for race day as we discussed, as we went through, as we tested, as we applied in simulation, you should be achieving your goals and be very successful and happy with achieving those. And validating, back to the original point, validating why you're so passionate, why you have so much desire, and why you have so much love for doing this sport. So it was just another side note on listening to how in other sports, how it works, and how that applies to us in the ultra endurance world. One last thing with that is the mindset aspect is a little bit different because there's no real X's and O's. It's now pushing the right buttons to motivate you during the event in order to reach your potential, to achieve the result, the desired goal, outcome, time, etc. for your event. And so sometimes that does come into play with regards to your passion, your desire, and working with you on finding out what truly drives you, what truly motivates you deep down inside in order to find out what the triggers are to help you achieve your goals, as well as to maybe steer you in the right direction that you're motivated incorrectly. Not that the goal is incorrect or undesirable or not worth achieving, but that the reason for the goal is a bit off, whether in a negative or a positive way. There's times where we set up goals and you're driven internally by, jealousy, lack of validation, proving a point, or you could also be driven by other factors that are more positive inside you, such as, love of the sport, love of competing, love getting to an event and looking around you and a whole new persona comes out of you, almost that you that is a completely different person, that you're a racer and you look around you and you truly enjoy racing people and beating some of them, beating all of them, or just the opportunity to race. There's a variety of different motivational factors once you're in the game of racing or in an event, but that's a different mindset than the overall for training mindset. And that's what I meant too. Nobody should be questioning that mindset, why you're doing the sport. So anyway, I hope that also helps a little bit as a sort of insight into my coaching, how I go about it with you, why I see it the way I see it with regards to standing beside you as a coach. The last thing I want to talk today about is the tweet I sent out the other day about the C's of success. Many of you might not follow me on Twitter, and that's fine. I don't follow a lot of people on Twitter myself. But I wanted to bring it up here, and that is, I just wanted to talk about that flow of the C's to success a little bit more clearly. And what I talk about is the 3 C's: commitment, communication, and completion. When you focus on the 3 C's properly, you break each piece down into how to have a successful training plan, successful season, successful outcome as we work towards our event. So commitment. Commitment is the first step in all this, right? We're committing to an event. We're committing to the training. We're signing up. We're committing to a coach. We're committing to a schedule. We're committing to certain hours this coming week. We're committing to how we're going to eat, how we're going to drink, how we're going to go about training like we want to train. That is the commitment. That comes first. That sets us up for how we want to do what we're going to sign up to do, or what we have signed up to do. So I think it's important for most of us to go through the exercise of knowing what we're committing to. And many of you get that question from me in your training, and that is, what can you commit to this week in your hours? What can you train this next 2-week period? And once you verbalize that, once you write that out to me, that becomes your commitment to me, to your training plan, to yourself as you progress towards your event. And so in this example, in this small example, if you say, I can do X hours this week, and they're broken down like this over the 7 days, and that looks like 16 hours this week, as an example. That's just an example. and at the end of the week you've only achieved 12 hours, well, then it's a question of your commitment. You said or you planned or thought you could do it. You didn't do it. So you need to, maybe for the following week, as you work on that training hours plan with me or with yourself, change your commitment. Again, setting up a successful commitment, something that you can achieve that week, achieve that month, whatever piece of commitment we're talking about towards the event, towards the race, towards your goal, towards your desired outcome. Break it down into chunks and think, this week, for example, I committed to that many hours and I successfully completed those 16 hours, those 12 hours. I modified to 12 hours. And you feel a lot better completing your week, completing your commitment, executing on your commitment, holding true to your commitment, than if you're falling short. So your commitment sets you up. Your communication, the second piece of the C's, is how you're following through on that commitment. And communication is with your coach, is with me, is with yourself on the reality of how you're executing the plan. Your communication is how you're working with your family on committing to your plan, on executing your plan, on completing the training. Your communication is how you set up your day-to-day and prepare yourself, communicating with yourself or with your coach or with those around you, so that you can have the most successful training day, so you can have the most successful outcome of what you're doing as part of your commitment to achieving your goals. And especially from a coaching standpoint, your communication helps me help you fulfill your commitment for the week. So you committed to something, to me, the coach, on what you can do this week. Now you're communicating to me on how either you're executing on that commitment or how things are getting in the way of that commitment, so therefore I can adjust your commitment. And then finally, there's completion. If we've done everything that we committed to do, we've modified the training via communication so that you can then be successful in your commitment, then we've completed the plan. We repeat that 20, 30, 40 weeks a year or into the training, we will have a successful training plan. We will have a successful result. We will have progress towards your goal, a significant progress. And by communicating, by being committed, by communicating, and by completing the plan, we are also ensuring that we are better today than we were yesterday, and we're setting ourselves up to be better tomorrow than we are today. So I just wanted to clarify a little bit that tweet I sent out on the 3 C's to successful training, as well as coaching, as well as working our way towards an event and a goal. All right, so another podcast is done. Again, thank you all for listening. I get a lot of great feedback. Many of you have said you don't mind that it goes so long or that I sometimes ramble. I apologize that I'm not breaking into specific topics for the entire 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes of these pod blasts, and occasionally I will. I'm also working on getting a little bit more updates into this on how athletes are doing and so on. It's a light time of year, obviously, as you can imagine. It's December, not a lot of racing results and so on. But that's where we currently stand. We're at podcast 12 now, and I'm enjoying it. I'm glad you're enjoying listening. Continue to send me topics. Continue to send me thoughts or questions or things that you think might be good on the podcast. And have a great training week ahead. I'm sorry I missed a podcast in here somewhere over the Thanksgiving week and holiday, but we're back on to a Friday pod blast. Thanks, you guys, and have a great week of training, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.